Welcome to CBC Windsor News at 6. I'm Meg Roberts. Thanks so much for spending part of your evening with us tonight. A Windsor man was saved from a fire in an apartment building earlier today. We have more details on that. Plus, the government has decided to award Paralympians the same amount of money as Olympians for podium finishes. We speak with a local former Paralympian about this decision. And for years, a local beer has been selling out within minutes, which could have something to do with its close connection to one of the region's most beloved donuts. A daring rescue from Windsor firefighters. Earlier this morning, crews recovered a man from the 17th floor of a downtown apartment building. This after a fire broke out at 920 Olette Avenue, known as Olette Manor. Windsor Fire and Rescue say multiple fire trucks arrived on the scene just before 8 a.m. to contain flames in a single unit. One resident was taken to hospital with undisclosed injuries. Olette Manor is a 24-story community housing building. Most of the building's residents are seniors on fixed incomes. The cause of the fire is still unknown. And an update tonight on the fire that has kept City Hall closed for the last 2 days. Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens tweeting out this dramatic video earlier today. The video shows a small explosion and a fire that followed. The mayor tweeted that was the moment power went out. City Hall remained closed today as crews worked to restore power to the building. According to the city, the outage was originally deemed a blown transformer, but it says further investigation has found to be a cable failure in an underground conduit. Crews were able to restore power to the 350 City Hall Square yesterday, but work continues to get power flowing into 400 City Hall Square. Environmentalists want to see the rundown Windsor Raceway included in the Ojibwe National Park proposal in order to give the natural area more protection. The CBC's TJ Deer has more.
This is what the Windsor Raceway looks like today. Abandoned, derelict, but it might not look like this in the future. This map, unveiled by Mayor Drew Dilkens on Friday, shows areas that are already zoned for development in the city. It was created as part of the dialogue on building more housing in Windsor. That orange site on the far left is the Windsor Raceway. After learning how the site is currently zoned, activists want to see the Raceway site become part of the Ojibwe National Urban Park. That's because it's located right next door to the proposed boundaries for the park.
When I saw the big orange blob at right adjacent to the Ojibwe Prairie, the future federal urban national park, it was disappointing. And there's no, I know the mapping's purpose wasn't to show green space, but if people were looking at it, Windsorites, they wouldn't realize maybe that this Ojibwe Prairie was directly adjacent, this endangered ecosystem.
We certainly support, increased housing densification. I mean, it makes sense. It helps with urban sprawl, loss of farmland, loss of other natural areas. So I mean, we do like the process. Just we don't like that one spot necessarily to be developed.
Roselle and Panchison both sent letters to council saying they're not in favor of any plans to develop the site, should any arise. They did, however, provide a potential alternate option.
I would like to see, it be preserved and become part of the Ojibwe Prairie Urban National Park.
Windsor-Tecumseh MP Eric Kazmierczak was asked about that option at a funding announcement earlier today.
The great thing about the Parks Canada process, building the Ojibwe National Urban Park, is that we want to hear from the community. We want to hear from stakeholders who have ideas of how we can actually expand the Ojibwe National Urban Park.
Kazmierczak did not say when the final boundaries of the park would be released. TJ Deer, CBC News, Windsor.
It's a new era for Canadian Paralympians. Canada's para-athletes will be financially rewarded for medals they win at the Paralympic Games in Paris this summer. It means they're eligible for the same amount of money as Olympic athletes. CBC's Olivia Stefanovic has the details.
No matter how many medals Tyler McGregor won, the reward was never equal to his Olympic counterparts. Now that's changing.
You're not making a whole lot of money doing this. And so I think for any Paralympian, it allows you to focus on what you can do right now to be your best.
We are absolutely thrilled, delighted to announce today the Paralympic Performance Recognition Program.
Starting this summer, Canadian Paralympians will be given the same amount of money as Olympic athletes for making the podium at the 2024 Paralympic Games and each of the games after.
It is proof how much Paralympic sport has grown.
$20,000 for winning gold, $15,000 for silver, and $10,000 for bronze.
For me personally, it's a huge motivator.
Paralympic silver medalist Priscilla Gagné says the money helps, but this is about being treated fairly.
People see you differently. You're not as valued as maybe the Olympians.
Canadian athletes started to get money for medals at the 2008 Beijing Olympics, but Paralympians were left out. This donor is trying to fill the gap. He put up $4 million, half of the money needed to pay Paralympic medalists.
The stories are so compelling and they're so human and emotional, and I can't get them out of my mind.
Even though Ottawa is also contributing $2 million, the Canadian Paralympic Committee still has to turn to generous donors to raise more.
It's not appropriate anymore for us to have 2 or 3 different tiered systems for how people participate in sport.
Back on the ice, McGregor says it's the beginning of change.
This helps create that virtuous cycle that allows us to continue to build and elevate the level of Paralympic sport here in Canada.
A hope that Paralympians will finally get the respect and pay they deserve. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
That news hits home big time for former Paralympic Danielle McLoud. The Windsorite has won 7 Paralympic medals over her career, 3 gold, 2 silvers, and 2 bronze between the 2000 Sydney Games and in Athens in 2004. We chatted with her about the announcement and what that money would have meant to her and her family while she was competing.
For me, when I first heard it, it's really putting that action behind the words of, Paralympic athletes are parallel to Olympic athletes. And this really does prove that, right? It really is another step of being able to say as Canadians that, all of our athletes are respected and are honored the way that they deserve. Not going to lie. My first thought is, can we have retro? But no, I think we could focus on the past and we could focus on, of course, it should have come at the same time as the Olympic athletes, but it's here now.
Obviously there's such a conversation to be had around even Olympians and especially Paralympians and about being able to compete and affording to be able to compete. What would this money have meant to you back when you were competing?
We always joked that we had a pool in our backyard, but no furniture in our upstairs living room, because it was a family sacrifice to get me to the top of the podium. So, we probably would have had furniture in our living room a little earlier. You make a sacrifice to get to that level, so much work to stay on top. And so when you can come home and know that, you've medaled for your country, and this is your country's way of saying, hey, here's to make it easier. We want to see this again in 4 years. You don't have to worry then about working, or, you really can focus on the sacrifice of just taking care of your body and doing what you need to do to be on top.
The U.S. is already doing this, correct? Like there are other countries already doing this.
I believe so. I know that when I was competing, like the European countries were already doing this. We always joked about, right? Like, we got to move over there. So yeah, so this has been a long time coming, and it's so exciting.
Windsor Mayor Drew Dilkens says he was unaware of the bus shortage Windsor Transit is facing, responding to a story we brought you last week about Transit Windsor not being able to meet minimum daily standards. Last week, CBC reported several high-frequency bus routes in the city have had to reduce service. According to Transit Windsor's executive director, the service has been short of its minimum requirements by 20 buses at times this month. The executive director says that the aging fleet requires repairs and that repairs are being delayed because of broken hoists in the city garage. The mayor saying he wasn't aware of those issues.
I was quite surprised to read your story because those issues had never been raised up to my attention, and so quite surprised to see that. And clearly very happy to know that they're working on fixing the hoists, which was quite surprising. We would expect that that is a core service that we would expect the Executive Director of Transit to be working on, and if there were issues, to raise them up to our office. And so at the end of the day, we will get that right. We will fix that and make sure that the equipment is functioning fine so that we can keep the buses that we own on the road and actively in service.
A 2021 report to council highlighted Windsor's inadequate garage would need $43 million in repairs and replacements. Advocates have criticized the city for not being proactive on that. Well, after 65 years of driving a cab, a Windsor man has hung up the keys for the last time. 84-year-old George Hamilton began driving taxis in 1958. He's seen the city through some ups and downs over the years, but the most pressing issue for him leaving the profession is driver safety.
When I was younger, I was able to take care of myself. I was kind of a scrapper, but now you never know who's getting in your cab. You got to be aware at all times. You know, there's some crazy people that get in the cab. Now, but you know, after the years, I could pretty well tell. And if I saw somebody that was pretty well oiled up, I just drive right by. But now you have to pay attention to what you're doing.
Hamilton says when he started out, he didn't have a driver's license or a taxi permit. He borrowed his uncle's taxi to play pickup on the streets of Windsor, lining up by boxes attached to telephone poles to get fares. Some of the notable people he's picked up: Gordie Howe, Don Cherry, and Dennis Rodman. Hamilton says he's not done driving, though. Him and his wife plan to do some traveling in their motorhome. Although the pandemic was challenging for a lot of students as they adjusted to online learning, there were some students who thrived going to school at home. And now they're facing serious mental health illnesses. One Windsor therapist, Mercy Corday, says she's seeing youth who have depression, anxiety, and disordered eating. She spoke with Windsor Morning host Amy Dodge.
Why does the virtual learning sort of add a layer of security?
So we're seeing youth who were, for the most part, already having a hard time before the pandemic in social settings. So whether they were being bullied or whether they were already having anxiety or having depression, being at home gave them that extra layer of comfort and security, where they didn't have to put on their cameras if they didn't want to. They could be in their comfort of their own room. If they were distracted or bored, sometimes just to kind of go online and look up something else. We saw a lot of that. And so having that being taken away and having to return back to a place where they didn't necessarily feel safe we see that it's creating more challenges.
A peculiar scene in one subdivision in South Windsor today. Annie Yakub noticed 14 turkeys roosting on her backyard fence. Shocked, she grabbed a couple photos of the birds and posted them online. We spoke with her earlier today.
My reaction was shocking, and I kind of just yelled a little loud that my cousin came running upstairs to check on me, and she's like, "Oh my God, what the heck is that?"
After that cold streak, these temperatures are feeling mighty warm, and you can see it there in our tower cam, all that fog. We have your weather forecast coming up after the break. Josiah, you know my desk faced right across to the Detroit River. The issue was I wasn't able to see it today with all that fog.
Yeah, very foggy out there all day today, Meg, and there actually is a fog advisory in effect right now. You want to make sure you're driving a little more careful, and it has been a little bit warmer than what we're used to, however. That rain is going to continue throughout the night. And right now we're sitting around +4 degrees. It looks like that fog cover is going to continue. So as I mentioned, make sure you have those fog lights on if you're hitting the road tonight. Let's turn to our 5-day forecast now to see what's in store the rest of the week. Tomorrow, we're seeing a 40% chance of drizzle turning into periods of rain in the evening. The temperature is staying around 5 degrees that day. Friday, a high of 7 with 40% chance of showers. Saturday, cloud cover during the day, a high of 6. That evening, a 60% chance of rain showers or flurries. Sunday, a 60% chance of flurries, but a high of +4. That dips to -5 overnight, leading us to Monday, a high of 0 and a mix of sun and cloud that day.
Do you know what could really cure a rainy day blues is sometimes a good drink, a good beverage.
A good beverage.
And I know that you've had a sneak peek at one. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, Meg, I'm actually going to grab something here.
Oh, we've got props here this evening.
So I got a Colasanti donut,
okay,
which I'm sure you're familiar with, an Essex local favorite.
Yes, I've had quite a few of those in my day, yeah.
Now imagine this cinnamon sugar goodness in a beer.
Ooh.
That is what we're talking about today, and we did talk about today on Afternoon Drive. This is the Colasanti's donut beer, which releases once a year, and it's produced by the Grove Company in Kingsville. Now, this is, as I said, a once-a-year release, and it's been crazy. It kind of sends the county into a frenzy. So it's sold out in 4 minutes the first year. This year, they've quadrupled the batch, and they're still expecting it to be kind of crazy. So that drops tomorrow. I spoke to Donovan McFadden, the head brewer, and he explained more.
In the past, our first year around, it was first go around, it was during lockdown and COVID. So just online sales, it was gone in a few minutes. And so we doubled production, amped it all up, and then for our first big release in 2022, it sold out again in less than a half hour. So we've scaled it up once again. Hopefully it's enough to meet the demand for this go around. Maybe we'll make it for 2 hours this year.
So there you go, Meg. Those donuts are limited in person. There are some online if you want to try to grab some. They have shipped these all the way to Alberta and BC, so anything for that Essex County taste. And if you want to check out that full interview and hear more, you can see the web story online right now at cbc.ca/Windsor.
I understand you had a bit of a taste.
I did.
What was it like?
It's very sweet. It's kind of like the ice wine of beers, I would say. So if you like maple, if you like cinnamon, all of that's infused in there. Actually, the maple's not infused. Vanilla, cinnamon, some of those undertastes that you might get in a donut. But it does actually taste like a pastry. So
what I'm hoping for, perhaps, is if they make one with the peach juice from Colasanti's, because that's my favorite.
Maybe that'll be the next thing for the Grove.
They could absolutely do that. Thanks so much for that, Josiah.
Thank you, Meg.
We got a little bit more coming up after the break. Warmer temperatures this winter have limited outdoor skating in parts of the country, and this is raising concerns about the safety of open ice. In Halifax, officials have not been testing lakes and ponds to determine if the ice is thick enough to safely support skaters. CBC's Kayla Hounsell tells us what's behind the decision.
Hitting the ice on a pond or lake. It is a national pastime steeped in nostalgia. But now the tradition itself might be on thin ice.
Now we rarely get an extended period on the lake. It's later than it used to be, and the duration of the time where it's safe to skate is shorter.
So Halifax has decided to stop testing the ice thickness to see whether it's safe for skating. Chocolate Lake used to be packed with skaters. Normally McLeod has lived here for 26 years.
We've been able to see climate change right out our back door.
Across the country, there have been warnings about thin ice. In Ottawa, 2 teens drowned. Now, in Halifax, this regional councillor says the decision to stop checking for safety is a practical one.
For the last several years, we've averaged 1 day of available skating. Last year there was none. So the program has really just become irrelevant because basically the ice is never safe to skate on anymore.
7 centimeters or less, you should not be out there at all. And that's a good chunk of our winter now.
CBC meteorologist Ryan Snodden says there are just not enough consecutive days below freezing.
It's 3 days here, 4 days here at the most, and that's usually only 1 or 2 times in the entire winter.
McLeod has the records to prove it.
I started keeping records 25 years ago, and the owner before me kept records before that. So I have 33 years.
Back then, the lake was often frozen in December.
Last year it was February 5th.
Oh, this one's February 11th.
And this one's February 4th.
Her husband checks the ice himself, so they'll continue skating on the rare occasion it's thick enough.
I do feel sad that there will be kids growing up who won't really know what it's like to just pop on the skates and head to the lake.
A sign climate change isn't just causing dramatic weather events, but also affecting everyday life. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
The head of Boeing is meeting with U.S. senators in Washington. This comes after a cabin panel on one of the company's planes blew out mid-flight. It was a Boeing 737 MAX 9 jet. CBC's Richard Madden has more.
For now, these will be private meetings on Capitol Hill behind closed doors, but many lawmakers are pushing to have full public hearings on Boeing's safety issues. Boeing CEO Dave Calhoun is a high-stakes damage control mission after that door plug panel blew off in midair earlier this month on board a Boeing 737 MAX 9 plane. No serious injuries were reported, and the airline landed safely. But passengers on board that flight have filed a lawsuit, and federal regulators have grounded the entire fleet for safety inspections, which includes its manufacturing process and production lines. Since then, airline technicians reportedly found more loose bolts on other grounded MAX 9 planes. And now, 2 of its biggest customers, United and Alaska Airlines, are both publicly slamming Boeing over manufacturing problems that have forced them to ground more than 140 of their Boeing planes. You rarely see airline executives publicly criticize another manufacturer, and this includes Boeing.
I am angry. This happened to Alaska Airlines. It happened to our guests. It happened to our people. My demand on Boeing is what are they going to do to improve their quality programs in-house?
And then United CEO is threatening Boeing's bottom line. United saying it may consider alternatives to buying Boeing planes in the future.
I'm disappointed that the manufacturing challenges do keep happening at Boeing. This isn't new. The MAX 9 grounding is probably the straw that broke the camel's back for us. We're going to at least build a plan that doesn't have the MAX 10 in it.
So that could really impact Boeing's bottom line. For now, all MAX 9s remain grounded, hundreds of flights have been canceled, and it's unclear when federal regulators will clear those planes to fly again. Richard Madden, CBC News, Washington.
Animal shelters across the country are struggling with a growing number of abandoned puppies. The underground breeding business took off during the pandemic, but now interest in pet adoptions has dropped sharply. CBC's Aaron Collins has the story.
Like feeding fish? It's called a puppy party. Dozens of pups to play with, all looking for homes.
I didn't think that I wanted to completely adopt when I got here, but
I fell in love with her. So we'll see.
Are you going to leave with this dog today?
Maybe. It's a possibility.
This many puppies in this shelter, unheard of just a few years ago.
Having a puppy in shelter was very rare, and if you did have one, people were clamoring at the door to come and adopt that animal.
The number of puppies here up 200% from last year, a trend reported by shelters across the country since the height of the pandemic.
People wanted to get an animal into their home, and so people started breeding to fill that demand. That demand doesn't exist anymore, so we would really love the breeders who are doing this to stop.
Rising costs and a shortage of rental housing makes owning a dog harder too.
Buying all of the stuff that we need for her today if we do get her. And then also in like 4 months from now, we're trying to decide where we want to live too.
One potential adopter on the fence, but nearby, a match.
I have Dystria.
This family getting a bit bigger today.
Look, they're so cute. They're so tiny. Like they need a home, people to love them. Yeah.
But this adoption is just a drop in the bucket for a growing problem. Of the 30 puppies available on this day, only 8 found a new home. Aaron Collins, CBC News, Calgary.
Talk about puppy fever. Well, that's it for CBC Windsor News. Don't forget, for news anytime, you can go to our website at cbc.ca/Windsor. Thanks so much for tuning in. Looking forward to seeing you back here tomorrow night.